I'm in the middle of creating my first landscape series ever, even though I've been painting over 20 years. But all of my material came from sketches. Scaling up is one of those things that seems like it should be easy, and it is the opposite.
Hi, I'm Maribeth Quinn, a mixed media collage artist, and today I thought I would talk about what I have learned about scaling paintings up from very small studies into very large paintings.
So this is a 30 by 20, nice landscape size, and I'm attempting to scale up. It's a feat. It's a learning curve, trying to take an idea and scale it to a much larger size. So here are the things that I have learned so far are really crucial to figure out. So I'll use this big 30 by 30 as an example. Going from this, that I think is a 6 by 8 inches, to a 30 by 30 is quite a jump. And so you need a plan. And so I'll use this as an example of how I've broken it down so I can get to something that simulates this.
So the first thing that you have to figure out is, what do you love about that small painting? Really get specific and figure out what things make it something that you actually want to reproduce into something larger.
For me, it is that I found this nice balance between abstract and representational, and that there are so many layers and you can see them. I didn't try to hide the layering process, and there were also places that I left it very unfinished looking, and I liked that a lot too. One of the things that I had to realize from the outset is I'm never going to duplicate this painting. I'm never going to be able to duplicate it. There are way too many layers and happy accidents that happened. And so it's a matter of breaking it down and realizing that I will use this as the basis of where I'm going, but I will never duplicate it exactly. At some point, I have to look at the painting that I'm currently making and just begin responding to it and what it wants to be. You're never going to duplicate a small study, but this is what exploring a theme is.
So the second thing is that you really have to think about, how did you make your marks? What tools did you use? And how are you going to make those same marks that look a certain way on a small painting? How are you going to translate those into the larger size? Because a small pencil mark on a small painting looks just fine, but you put that pencil mark on a big painting, it's not even going to make a mark. So you have to figure out how to make that same gesture and mark, but in a bigger way.
So for me, I love this middle part, and that was definitely just a swipe of paint with glazing fluid that I just put on just haphazardly with one stroke. That's what I love about it. And so I'll need to figure out how to do that on a big scale. And that will mean I have to find a different kind of tool. On a painting this size, I probably used a silicone shaper about this size. I think it's just like a 1 inch. I'm going to need something much larger. So I do have a 3-inch shaper tool, but that's probably still not going to be large enough. If you look at this swipe, it goes from the bottom to almost the middle of the painting up here, and then takes up a large swath of this quadrant down here in the lower left. Looking at this 30 by 30, finding the middle and then that lower left quadrant, that's a big area. I've been playing around with different things. This is a shower squeegee. This also is some sort of squeegee. For instance, with this swath right here, I'm going to take some of this Lucas Steel Blue. I'm just going to add some glazing medium to it. thin it out, make it somewhat transparent. And you know, the other thing that I have at issue is that this is paper and I'm trying to work on canvas. They're very different surfaces. So they take all these marks differently. So you have to sort of figure that out. So here's a swipe with something like this, right? And if I am trying to go much larger, so somehow I've got to get a bunch of this paint down to where the width of my tool can catch it, and then swipe with it. But you see it connects with the paper differently. So, or the surface connects with the surface differently. So how am I going to solve those problems? It's not just about the mark. It's about the tools that you use, the surface that you're now going to be on. It's all very different. So you basically have to experiment with different tools and different marks to see how you're going to do them on a larger scale. So for instance, I love this little mark right here. I did this with a Caran d'Ache crayon. This mark that this crayon will make is about that wide. Unless I wanted to shave this off and make it completely flat, I might be able to work with that, but it interacts with the texture on a canvas differently as well. So how is it that I'm going to make some sort of mark or marks that relate in size to that 30 by 30 canvas the way this relates to this 6 by 8?
Because in the end, what was really just a small gesture or a stroke of a brush on a small painting is probably going to require 2 or 3 steps on a bigger painting with very different materials maybe, or tools. The third thing is, if you have layers in your painting, you really have to look at those layers.
When I look at this painting, I might be tempted to just look at what's catching my eye on the top and immediately go to my painting and start trying to put that on it. But what's catching my eye is probably the very last layer. So I really have to look more closely. What is underneath? What's the original layer? I see some marks that I have then glazed over right here. So I need some darker marks that extend, like from this area, I need them to extend down, so then later I can glaze over them and get that effect. This swipe that I love across here is semi-transparent, more in some places than others, and so you see what's underneath it poking through. So that first layer of the painting, I have to worry about what's underneath that swipe and what subtle colors are showing through. So for instance, with this painting that I'm just doing the first layers on, you see that I did come down from this mass right here and put in some darker marks that then can be glazed over. I also can see here that there's some underlying really light colors showing through, like right there, that have been glazed over. So I needed to put some color in here so when I glaze over it, it doesn't just look plain and white. Here in the bottom, there are a number of things that are underneath that glazing right there. And so I had to put something in here that will actually show through. These are some first marks that I want them to show through here and there because I want it to be more minimalist. Locating what that first layer is, what the second layer is, what the third layer is crucial to also getting the same effect.
Coming in at the last and trying to backfill something that was actually showing through from the first layer is just not going to have the same look. And the fourth thing is, when I made all of these small studies, I was being as loose and free and intuitive as I could possibly be, because that's the look I wanted on my paintings. But now that I'm actually trying to bring the gist of this onto a large surface, I have to start in the opposite way. I have to start by really analyzing what's going on here. I have to think and plan and problem solve before I even pick up the brush or mix the paint. So on this, I started more intuitive and problem solved and analyzed later. On this, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to start very methodical. I'm going to go through the steps in just the right order. I'm going to problem solve before I ever get there. And then at some point, this painting is going to demand to be on its own. It's going to say, I am not that small study. You've got the basic things down. Now, become intuitive again. Now, put on unique marks, respond to what's happening here, and let it be its own painting. And you will come out with something that is entirely unique and entirely you. I hope this was helpful. Scaling up is not easy. It's one of those things that on the surface, it looks like it should be just make that really big, but it's just not like that at all. So don't be hard on yourself if you find this to be difficult. It is difficult and challenging, but it's really fun when you can sit down and figure out how to do something on a bigger scale. It makes you a better artist to learn how to problem solve in this whole new way, and you will come out with work that is uniquely your own.